Hello, everyone, and welcome to United Way. Live United. I'm Terry Westerfield. And joining me today, I have a friend in, Laura Paul, who is the Executive Director of lowernine.org. Welcome, Laura.
Good morning, sunshine.
I'll tell you what, I have always thought it was genius, and that is the best name ever. And lowernine.org, you don't have to tell anybody to go to the website. You don't have to worry about phone numbers. It's just right out there. And tell me a little bit. I know that there's a rich history behind lowernine.org because you are indeed a partner agency of United Way of Southeast Louisiana's No Place Like Home rebuilding.
Indeed. Correct.
Endeavor. I mean, we have so many things. Let's start at the beginning because you came here and lowernine.org started, dare we say it, almost 10 years ago after Katrina and Rita. And then you lived through the oil spill. And let's see, there was contamination of the Chinese drywall.
Sheetrock, indeed.
Well, anyway, there's a little bit of a list we could go through. But let's tell everybody, you are an amazing rebuilding agency. And go ahead, start the history.
We get that a lot.
Yeah, you are.
We've been rebuilding homes in the lower Ninth Ward since 2007. I actually go back a little farther than that. I came down in 2006, in January of 2006, so right at the beginning of 2006, as a volunteer, as many people did. No understanding of what I was walking into, and no history with New Orleans at all. And I came to volunteer for a week. So you're right, it's been about 10 years. It's been what, 9 years? 9 years. This August was the anniversary.
Yeah.
And I've been here working. I volunteered for my first 14 months here, and now I have the honor and privilege of running a volunteer organization, lowernine.org.
And made your home here and bought a home
here. Oh, absolutely.
Here.
Sure, I did. Yeah, in the lower Ninth Ward. Yep. Yeah. Put my money where my mouth is, so to speak.
Well, Laura, before we get in more to the organization, you have to tell me what inspired you. Why did you want to come? Were you just like so many who saw the devastation and said, all right, I'm going to do something? Something spoke to you about our city, about that area?
Gosh, I wish I could say that were the case. I'll tell you what happened. I had a job I'm Canadian. I'm from Montreal. And I had a job
it's okay.
I had a job that I hated, and I quit. And I decided that I would, I think find myself or something. I flew down to Florida and I rented a car and I started driving across the country. And so I didn't get far. I think I did Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and then I hit Louisiana. I knew that I wanted to see New Orleans, but I was not at all prepared for what I might have seen. What I did see in terms of the level of devastation here and the need for help. I was intending to volunteer for a week, but it became very clear to me that it would be extraordinarily self-involved of me to just turn around and continue on my journey of self-discovery. So I actually just stayed put. I worked for an organization called Emergency Community, which worked closely with the United Way. Very early on after the storm, we lived in a parking lot of an off-track bedding facility in St. Bernard Parish, and I
remember it well.
Yeah. We fed, I think it was 2,200 meals a day on average out of that facility. We were doing very sort of what I would refer to as sort of first response or very early of disaster recovery stuff. Yeah, it was astonishing to me that need still hadn't been met, or was still, we were handing out what we called hygiene kits, which were toothbrushes and shampoo and things like that, flood kits, which were these buckets with bleach and brushes so you could mold remediate your own home. You're quite right about the toxic mold. That was one of the first things that we dealt with. We did a lot of gutting. We did a lot of work like that, and we were in place for a couple of years after the storm. I actually worked with them in St. Bernard Parish, in Plaquemines Parish, down in Buras.
Down there, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we came back up to the lower Ninth Ward around the end of 2006. So I have been in the lower Ninth Ward serving that community since the end of 2006, in that neighborhood exclusively.
Well, here you are. I mean, the emergency community was an amazing place. I saw it both in Buras and St. Bernard, and it was a community gathering spot.
Absolutely.
People not only could find some friends, family members that maybe had been displaced, but here you were. It was the first time offering service. I think you even had a shower tent or some little areas. You had, you said the clothing, you had the food. It was just, the place in the parish. There was nothing else.
Yeah.
And you were providing, yes, you indeed were a first responder with this kind of thing. So I guess my question is, all right, here you were in St. Bernard, you go down to Plaquemines, down into the end of the earth, you come back, now you've come upon the Ninth Ward.
Right.
And
right.
this became your passion, and this is where you've stayed.
Yeah, it's funny, I'm a certain age. I won't tell you what that is, but I will tell you.
I have to tell you mine. Okay.
I will tell you that I feel very much like I've come to my professional calling, which is very exciting and wonderful to have found. I had no experience volunteering, had no experience in the nonprofit sector prior to coming down to Louisiana, and I have to say, the work inspires me every day. I don't know. I hope that everyone listening could say that about their own work and their own lives. My job is, first and foremost, never boring, which is wonderful. But serving the Lower Ninth Ward, in particular, speaks to me. I'm to some degree or to a large degree preaching to the choir with a local audience. But I tell groups of volunteers that I work with were all over the country, and in fact, we worked with volunteers from 31 countries, I think, today.
I see. I've met some of them before, from London, I think France one time, maybe someone from the Netherlands.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
You bet. And, again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but 80% of the city of New Orleans flooded in 2005, but a lot of the city, if not most of the city, are really back on their feet to a large degree now. And yet, if you visit the Lower Ninth Ward, which I encourage everybody to do, we offer a Lower Ninth Ward tour. I drive people through the neighborhood all the time. You have to keep in mind that the level of devastation there was significantly higher than in most of the other areas of the city. And it's definitely one of the hardest hit, certainly one of the slowest recovering communities in the Gulf Coast region. I mean, you think about 100% of the residential properties in a community being rendered uninhabitable. And think about how long that takes to recover from, particularly in a community of low wealth like the Lower Ninth Ward.
Well, that may be key because a lot of people talk about the socioeconomic difficulties. You had the some kind of incredible devastation when the levee system failed in Lakeview, but then you had a different group of people. And they've talked about the resources that were able to come back, make it more accessible faster. And that Ninth Ward, so because you had folks who were more blue-collar working, lower wage earners working numerous jobs, hardworking people. And also, as I always understood, there were some problems down there, just as there have been in Plaquemines and St. Bernard and other parishes that were so decimated, proving title, proving ownership.
That was
having to go and say, look, this is the house that my forebears have lived in for 200 years, but nobody's got the paper because it doesn't exist anymore.
It's interesting you say that because I think, the Road Home program, which was a federal program, was put in place in the state of Louisiana. I know, again, I'm preaching to the choir. A lot of people listening are very familiar, too familiar perhaps, with the program. The Road Home program was, let's not forget, found to be discriminatory in a federal court of law in 2011. The reason that it was found to be discriminatory is because instead of going with cost to rebuild or damage to properties, they decided to go with pre-storm property value. Now, in a neighborhood like the Lower Ninth Ward, property values were never going to be as high as they were in the, quote, good or better, sections of the city. That's the reason that the program was found to be discriminatory. Now, I would argue that the program was discriminatory earlier in that the paperwork required to file, which I understood was quite unwieldy, was in and of itself difficult for a family to complete or an individual to complete if they had, say, gone to a public school in the second lowest performing public school district in the country, which was the case here in New Orleans prior to the storm, with a 65, I believe, percent dropout rate from high school. It was a very, studies suggest that a community of low wealth, and the Lower Ninth Ward was 98.1% African American, and over 65% of the population lived below the average mean income of the country. Studies suggest that populations like that take 3 and 4 times the amount of time to recover from an event like Katrina. And of course, when I say an event like Katrina, there really hasn't been anything like that
Betsy
in
wasn't
recorded
even as-
history.
yeah.
Betsy was not nearly as serious an event. And there have certainly been storms since. Sandy comes to mind, but in terms of the effects and the levels of devastation, this country hasn't seen anything like that before, really, or since maybe the Chicago fire. But certainly it's been some time.
And the challenges remain. And I know that you have rebuilt the homes. How many? Is there a number? And again,
There is a number.
Well, no, I want to ask, but I also want to preface by saying because sometimes it's not like DIY TV. You can't just go on in a half hour. Wow, that was rebuilt.
Oh, and we're not nearly that fast.
No. It takes quite a time. Patience. It takes funding. It takes resources. Talk a little bit about that because there are people, yes, it's going to be 10 years later. It's 9 now, and this time next year we'll still be talking. It's been 10, as you just mentioned, 3 to 4 perhaps times as long. They're saying with this kind of experience, Steve Zimmer, who is now retired and one of our dear friends, who was United Way of Southeast Louisiana's kind of rebuild expert, said that this was a 12 to 15-year incident, or at least that's what authorities said, that it would take at least that long to
I think that's
have
conservative.
recovery. And that probably is. So now if you're saying it's 3 or 4 times that, we're talking another 40 years.
Well, no, I wouldn't say it's 3 or 4 times what it's been. I would say it's 3 or 4 times, and this is what studies suggest, 3 or 4 times for a community of low wealth that a community that's in better circumstances. So I will tell you, in case you're not aware, that FEMA's closeout date, the Federal Emergency Management Agency's closeout date for Katrina is 2025. So certainly we're planning on being around at least that long if we can, keep the lights on for that long. I have to say, lowernine.org, I joke around, and we work with volunteer labor. So we're training unskilled volunteers every day on work sites. We have a skilled crew leader, is the way that the structure works. We have a skilled crew leader working with a team of unskilled volunteers. We're rebuilding homes strictly for prior residents of the Lower Ninth Ward. You have to have lived in the Lower Ninth Ward prior to Katrina. You have to agree to use the home that we rebuild as your primary residence. And to date, we've fully rebuilt 74 homes.
Wow.
In the Lower Ninth. We're going to have a big party for 75.
I was going to say that's quite a monumental figure there.
Actually, I think that our 75th home delivery is going to be our first ever new construction project, which we've taken on Caffin Avenue in the Lower Ninth Ward. And we're very excited to be almost done with that, and to be looking at, like I said, 75 homes, I think is a significant accomplishment. I will tell you that I had a conversation with our recovery czar, and forgive me, I forget his name. At any rate, if y'all will remember, we had a recovery czar for some time, and I had the privilege of meeting him at a cocktail party a few years after the Ed Blakely was his name,
yes.
right? And
Cranes
I remember telling
in the sky. I believe he's in Australia now.
I believe he was sort of always
And
in
writing a
Australia
book.
and
Yeah,
back
he
and
might have
forth.
always been there.
God bless him. But I remember having a conversation with him at a cocktail party where I met him, and going up and introducing myself and saying, saying Laura with lowernine.org, and we've rebuilt 10 homes in the Lower Ninth Ward to date, and we're very excited to be there doing that work. And he said, that's fine. Would you call me when you've rebuilt 100?
Oh.
So I think I might give him a call.
At least at 75 and say, Ed.
Maybe I'll give him an update.
We're reaching this monumental goal. But, here we are talking. The challenges, we've just laid out some of them. And you're talking about the 75th here on Caffin is new construction. One thing, and I think we all know living here, but the difference between stick and brick in terms of the stick housing. I once heard New Orleans described as we're old, really old, and ancient. So when you have the beautiful historic homes, and many of a certain age that you're going to find in the Lower Ninth, it is much harder to rebuild.
Oh, of course,
those kinds of homes than if you were living in one of the brick, more ranch homes that were, more of the 40s, 50s, and onward. Because you could gut and still have a structure.
Yeah, that brick on slab construction, though, that should really never have happened in in the city of New Orleans. We say in the lower Ninth Ward, but more than 50% of the lower Ninth Ward is at or above sea level, which is more than you can say for Manhattan or the entire eastern seaboard of this country. Unfortunately, people were told that they could do that brick on slab construction, that it was safe to do because we had this great federal levee system, which, as we know, may not have been that terrific or wasn't that terrific. We need to go back to the building houses on pilings, and certainly with new construction, elevating a little bit. I think that's prudent. And we've been doing that stuff. It's funny you say new construction is easy. It is so much easier to build a new house than to rebuild an historic property or an older house that's been damaged. Yeah, everything comes together at 90-degree angles. All the materials are brand new.
No settling. You can already stabilize.
I have to say, too, when you're working in a community like that, and when people's ability to afford anything, we're doing a lot of deconstruction. We're very, very carefully taking apart existing homes, using every possible bit of the existing house that we can use in different ways to rebuild the house. I mean, it's sort of the original, the best sort of form of green building that we can do.
Well, it is, and you're kind of retaining the integrity,
absolutely,
the history again of the community.
And we don't need new construction permits from the city of New Orleans to do it, which is easier for us to navigate.
You're just saying with this wood. I mean, here it was underwater. I mean, it's not saying we have a termite problem in New Orleans.
We sure do.
My goodness! So you've got those kinds of challenges, and again, the monetary. Not only because of the good folks who had lived there and are trying to still come home and rebuild, but in raising the funds to do that. You said you've had all these volunteers come in, people from other countries. I was struck by something you've got going on right now, something 365. That was kind of interesting.
The 365 campaign is a fundraising campaign. I'm glad you think it's interesting. This is my idea. The idea being that you can support the organization with a donation of $1 a day. You can do that in one of a couple of ways. You can commit to a regular monthly donation of $30.50, I think it works out to, or you can make a one-time donation of $365 to the organization, and you know that you're a sustaining member of lowernine.org, that you are keeping this long-term recovery going, which is something that I would never have thought. And I think it has to be said. I think people in New Orleans, even in New Orleans, never mind the rest of the country, don't realize that long-term recovery is as necessary and is as active as it is. I think that you have to go over that industrial canal bridge, and you really have to put your feet on the ground in that neighborhood. And I encourage everybody who has the ability to do that to come down and see the neighborhood. Happy to show people around. Long-term recovery is alive and well, or at least alive in that neighborhood, and is going to be necessary for quite some time to come.
And that's always been a role that United Way has played as well in long-term recovery.
Absolutely.
And when you're talking about some of the bigger or the biggest charitable groups, people think of you've got the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, United Way, things, but we all have a role we have kind of carved out, and there are those immediate first responders who are providing food or shelter, different things. A lot of people who are moved to give and do so, there's always been this discussion. It kind of goes to the forefront because that's what you see that's uppermost in your mind. Well, if everyone here has had, Katrina and Rita fatigue for the last 4 or 5 years already, can you imagine how that wears thin in going forward? But the need is still there.
United Way has always been a terrific supporter, not only of first response efforts like the ones that I was involved with in Plaquemines and in St. Bernard and in Orleans Parish, but also of this longer term sustained work. And one of the messages that is always spoken to me that United Way has been really good about is making sure that everybody understands, and I don't know that everybody takes this to heart. So I will tell you how I best understand this story and how I learned this story. And I'll tell you what I refer to as my Smoke Pit Dave story. This is a gentleman who I had the privilege of working with in St. Bernard Parish. And Dave was a St. Bernard Parish resident, and he went to work every day alongside the volunteers that ran this camp that we had. And you've been out there, but for those of you who are listening who aren't familiar, we lived in tents in a parking lot of an off-track bedding facility. I was there for 9 months. The organization was there for longer than that. We went and lived similarly in other sites. But Dave was a St. Bernard Parish resident, and he worked what we referred to as our smoke pit. We were to a large degree, we were a feeding organization. And as you pointed out, we had laundry facilities and things like that for the community. But this was one of our major functions. And he ran this outdoor grilling area. So he would, prepare all the grilled meats, barbecued chicken or what have you. And he and I were in line one evening waiting for food. And there was a big long line, and it was understood that people who worked there, volunteers, would always go to the back of the line. So he and I were at the back of the line and waiting. And it really is just like, if you can imagine in your head, you can imagine being in line basically at a soup kitchen, a bread line, and what that felt like for people. And I, to be honest with you, until this day, until this conversation, I had never really given that any consideration. St. Bernard Parish was devastated. And the people in St. Bernard Parish were not in accustomed to being needy or taking charity or what have you. And there was a couple in front of us in line, and Dave was speaking with them, was just sort of saying, how are y'all doing tonight and what have you. And they seemed quite reserved and a little bit hesitant to engage. But he was such a gregarious guy. He was so fun and so positive. And he said to them, how are y'all doing? And at one point he said, well, I hope you like barbecued chicken. And the woman sort of looked at him and she said, yes, that's lovely and thank you. And she took a moment and she sort of looked at the ground. She looked back at him and she said, it's just we're really not accustomed to taking charity.
Not at all.
And I remember really clearly sort of tearing up almost, hearing this and thinking, oh my goodness, I had not given this consideration until this moment. I'd never thought what it must be like for this middle-class American, major American city, this community to have to line up, essentially, like I said, at a soup kitchen
Something
for this support.
30s,
now, this is United Way, gave us a
Depression.
lot of support back in those times. And I was speechless. I was literally speechless, just hadn't given it the consideration it deserved. Now, Dave, God bless him, I will never forget his reaction ever. He looked at her and he said, well, shoot, girl, I done cooked up 1,350 pieces of barbecued chicken, and if y'all don't eat it, we got to eat it for breakfast, and I like grits in the morning. And he immediately put her at ease. He immediately, and I'll never forget it. It was just the most perfect way of handling the situation, making her feel, comfortable, making her feel appreciated, making her understand that she was not humbled by this experience, that we were all human beings involved in the struggle together. He was a member of her community. He disarmed her immediately. It was such a charming moment. I'll never forget it. But it speaks back to the thing that United Way always said. Just yes, there are people who are not you or your family who are in need, but you need to keep in mind that there, but for the grace of God,
yes.
Go any of us.
You could be helping your neighbor, your friend, a family member you don't know.
Correct.
And I like the idea that what you were talking about, this coming together, this working together, and that's what you're doing at lowernine.org, because you are making sure that this community comes back, not only through the building of homes, but you're really rebuilding the fabric. Some of the other programs that you're working on with the people, I mean, you started gardens, you started all these other things that you've got, again, trying to weave this fabric, rebuild this whole wonderful area.
There's a lot of wonderful work going on in the Lower Ninth Ward with regard to rebuilding community. I will tell you that lowernine.org has stepped back from just about everything except home building. That's what we do well. That's what we focus on.
But you started these to get people to take over an ownership.
We started an urban farm, for example. We have since passed on the farm to a Lower Ninth Ward resident by the name of David Young, who runs a nonprofit by the name of Capstone. And you go out to LaManche Street in the Lower Ninth Ward. You can see David's farm. You can come see me at home at the same time. We live on the same. He works on, and I live on the same street. But yeah, there's a lot going on in the Lower Ninth Ward. And again, I can't say this strongly enough. Please, come and visit the neighborhood. Come and visit our office. Say hi. Visit us online. It's lowernine.org. And you can always find me through the website. My email address and cell phone are on the website. Call us, visit us. Come by and see the work that's going on. Yeah, my number, my cell phone number. I'm giving it out on the radio, which is good. Is 504-344-4884. We have an office line, but honestly, you can reach me anytime.
You're always out in the
field.
field.
To get us. Yeah, often.
Well, you're saying here that we've had a pullback. We're doing really just the building.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, no, it's not just the building.
Oh, wow.
That's everything. And again, in talking about the partnership with United Way and the other nonprofits, we kind of helped subsidize, gave rise to, supported groups like lowernine.org. You have done the same. Now you have Capstone. To me, I just look at it as this tree that's growing more and more branches, again, to provide shade and everything else. And I can really get away with the metaphors here, but
no, it's been a beautiful experience. It really has been an amazing experience. The community is coming back. We just broke ground last week on a fire station. I believe it's Fire Station 39. In the Lower Ninth Ward, which is very exciting. There's a school being built, a high school. We had 7 public schools prior to the storm. We have 1 serving the entire community
and
now.
And that's MLK, the charter school.
Yeah, Martin Luther King Charter, which is a K through 12 at the moment. But they are building a state-of-the-art high school facility in the neighborhood. Again, slow but steady recovery.
Well, I have to ask the question. Here we are. We've talked about, the 9th, the 10th will be coming up. You're going to be back, and we're going to be talking more about the Lower Ninth Ward and about lowernine.org before August of 2015 rolls around. But what is your take right now? What is your feel? Do you feel that it's becoming stronger, that more and more are coming home, more and more want to live there?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's it's funny because people have a hard time believing this, but as I said earlier, lowernine.org, we exist to return families to that community. We do not work with anyone who's a new resident. God bless them and good luck to them. But really, our belief is that as many of that original population of the community that wishes to return should be able to do so. And we still get calls. I got a call half an hour before, as it happens, half an hour before I left to come here this morning to see you, from a gentleman who said both my brother and my sister own properties in the Lower Ninth Ward, one on Caffin Avenue and one on Benton. And he said, I just got laid off from my job, so I agreed to help them try to find some support. What can you do for them? They're at different stages of their rebuilding, but they want to return to their homes in the Lower Ninth Ward. You've been gone for 9 years. Most of the people that we're dealing with now are living in other parts of the city. But imagine going, you go back and we were all here. Rents doubled between 2005 and 2006. They went up 100%.
And
So
more,
imagine
I understand,
paying,
in some areas.
of course. So paying a mortgage in some cases on a flood damaged property, waiting to get back to your house, getting your road home settlement, which in the Lower Ninth Ward was significantly lower than those settlements were in other communities, and just and the patience. I had a woman come to my office a couple of years ago now, and saying to me, saying I might be a minute getting back to you and trying to help you. She said, "Oh, sugar, that's okay. I'm in no rush." It'll be 8 years after the storm.
8 years
at this
after.
point,
Well, Laura, you are going to come back, and we have a silent partner with us today, a visitor, Coral Pogue, who is our lovely. She's an intern with lowernine.org, and we hope that, Coral, you'll come back and that you'll visit and you'll say a few words. She's observing now and learning, and it's great. People keep coming, folks, because the need is still there. Again, you can't be more simple than to remember lowernine.org. But Laura, if there's anything else you want to add, and again, in terms of a phone number or anything else, please do.
For information, call 504-344-4884. I'd love to hear from y'all.
Thank you so very much. Laura Paul, who is the executive director of lowernine.org. Lowernine.org is a community impact partner or partner agency of United Way of Southeast Louisiana's No Place Like Home partner building initiative. And about United Way of Southeast Louisiana, I want to let you know that there we aspire to help people live the best life possible. We support health and human service programs of nonprofit agencies like lowernine.org that, with United Way, work to strengthen children and youth, the elderly, families, and individuals from all walks of life in Jefferson, Orleans, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, St. Tammany, Tangipahoa, and Washington parishes. For more information, please visit us online at unitedwaysela.org. You can call 822-5540. Check us out on Facebook or on Twitter at United Way Sela. Aspire to change tomorrow starting today. Please join United Way. I'm Terry Westerfield, and for United Way, live united.